From inside the massive stone walls of the Kremlin, a storm was building. Not a storm of rain or thunder, but of something far darker. Rage, paranoia, and a hunger for absolute power. When Russia crowned a new ruler in the 16th century, they crowned a child who had already witnessed more betrayal than most men see in a lifetime. A child who learned early that mercy was weakness, loyalty was a myth, and survival was something you earned with your fists, and later, with fire. This is the final and most explosive story in the trilogy, the rise and descent of Ivan IV, the man who transformed Russia forever and earned a name that echoes through history, the Terrible. Before stepping into this brutal chapter of history, tap the like button so this story reaches more people, and subscribe if you want the kind of storytelling that grips you from the first line to the last. Now, let the final story begin. Ivan's life began with a curse. At just 3 years old, the boy lost his father, the Grand Prince of Moscow, leaving the kingdom in chaos. Russia was not a united empire. It was a battlefield of noble families, each clawing for control. When Ivan's mother suddenly fell ill, those same nobles knew exactly what happened. She had been poisoned. And with her death, the boy heir became nothing more than a pawn in a violent game of power. The palace, meant to protect him, became a nightmare. While rival families plotted and poisoned each other for influence, the future Tsar wandered the echoing corridors like a ghost. Servants ignored him. Guards mocked him. Noblemen humiliated him to prove who really ruled. Some days he was starved, some days beaten, some days abandoned completely, watching starving dogs rip apart scraps for food. The boy who would command armies first learned life by watching cruelty. He grew up surrounded not by teachers or guardians, but by treachery. Every smile hid a blade, every handshake hid betrayal, and the boy absorbed it all. People think monsters are born. They are not. They are created. The transformation began the moment young Ivan tasted real power. At 13, he issued his first order. Not a law, not a decree, but an execution. Prince Shuisky, one of the nobles who tormented him, was seized by the Tsar's guards and dragged outside. Ivan watched silently, almost peacefully, as dogs tore the man apart. No emotion, no hesitation, no mercy. The nobles who once laughed fell silent. A child's eyes had seen too much, and now he was done being their puppet. By the time he reached 16, Ivan did something no ruler had dared before. He declared himself Tsar of all Russia. Not prince, not king, Tsar. God's chosen ruler, a man destined to shape the future of a fractured land. And for a fleeting moment, the world glimpsed the greatness he could have achieved. Ivan reformed laws, reorganized the army, crushed corruption, promoted talented commoners instead of nobles, and opened Russia to global trade. The empire began to strengthen. Moscow grew richer. The kingdom expanded. But inside the Tsar, the darkness never disappeared. It simply waited. Ivan's spiral began the day he lost the only person who kept him human. His wife, Anastasia, gentle, wise, and fiercely loyal, was the single light in his storm-filled life. Her presence calmed the fury that boiled inside. But when she suddenly fell sick and died, everything changed. Ivan was convinced she had been poisoned. Whether true or not didn't matter. The grief shattered him. He tore through the palace screaming for justice, for blood, for revenge. He interrogated servants, nobles, priests, anyone who stood in his path. The Tsar, who once wanted a strong, united Russia, had become its executioner. But from this grief came something new, something terrifying: the Oprichnina. Ivan carved Russia into two halves, the land he ruled as Tsar and the land he ruled as executioner. Across his personal domain, he unleashed his black-clad army, the oprichniki. Dressed in black robes, riding black horses, they carried whips made of human skin and severed dog heads, symbolizing their mission to sniff out traitors. They hunted nobles, raided estates, tortured prisoners, burned entire towns to the ground, and displayed severed heads on spikes to remind the kingdom who commanded life and death. The Tsar, who didn't simply want control, he wanted fear. Fear so deep it lived in a man's bones. One of the darkest pages of his reign unfolded in the city of Novgorod. Rumors reached Ivan that the city was plotting betrayal. Whether the rumor was real didn't matter. Paranoia whispers louder than truth. Ivan stormed into the city with 10,000 oprichniki and unleashed a horror that defies imagination. Families were dragged into the freezing river and held underwater until they stopped struggling. Priests were beaten in churches. Streets ran red for days. When Ivan left, Novgorod was a graveyard. The Tsar, who had once wanted a strong, united Russia, had become its executioner. But the true tragedy of Ivan's rule took place not on a battlefield or in a captured city. It happened inside the palace, in a moment of rage that would haunt him forever. One afternoon, Ivan found his pregnant daughter-in-law wearing clothing he thought was improper. Furious, he beat her so badly she miscarried. When his eldest son confronted him, the Tsar lashed out, swinging his staff in a burst of uncontrollable anger. The blow landed. His son collapsed. Blood stained the floor. Ivan rushed to him, dropped to his knees, and held his dying child, screaming in terror. Real terror, not of losing power, but of losing the only family he had left. The heir to the throne died in his father's arms. The empire would never be the same. After that day, the Tsar's soul fractured completely. He grew unpredictable, self-destructive, obsessed with omens and visions. He believed enemies whispered to him in the dark. He believed demons followed him. He believed angels battled over his crown. He changed advisors constantly, trusting no one. He executed generals who won battles simply because he feared they might gain popularity. Yet in madness, he expanded Russia's territory, reformed its governance, and laid foundations for the empire that would become a global titan. Ivan was both creator and destroyer, builder and monster, visionary and tyrant. His duality is what makes his legacy so chilling. In 1584, the end came suddenly. Ivan was playing a game of chess when he leaned back, gasped for air, and collapsed. Whether poison, stroke, or pure exhaustion from years of rage, no one knows. The empire he left behind trembled, leaderless, divided, traumatized. But it survived, and the Russia we know today, its borders, its identity, its central power, was forged in the fire of his rule. Ivan earned the name Terrible, not because he was simply evil, but because he was immense. He was a storm given human form, a force that could build and destroy with the same hands. His life closes the final chapter of our trilogy. Rulers who pushed their power beyond the limits of humanity. Rulers who rose like gods, ruled like demons, and left legacies that shaped entire civilizations. If you want more series like this, stories of empires, conquests, kings, betrayals, hit the like button so this one reaches more people. Subscribe for more cinematic history, and drop a comment telling which ruler or era should become the next full saga. History never runs out of monsters. The question is, which one should we unmask next?